Today's Goosebumps book is about a boy who finds a magical, glowing typewriter, and every time he types out a story with it, it becomes real. And since the boy has a tendency to write scary stories, these new realities are a direct threat to him and his two friends. In other words, this is Are You Afraid of the Dark Season 2, Episode 5, The Tale of the Dream Machine. It's rare for Stine to crib something so contemporary to him. Usually he's nabbing iconography from the Twilight Zone and old B-movies. Our protagonist child today is Zackie, an aspiring young author who likes to write little one-page horror stories and shares them with his two friends. Alex is quite fond and supportive of Zackie's work, but Adam is very vocal about how not scary they are, and how he doesn't get scared by anything. "I never get scared by books or stories," Adam insisted, "especially stories about dumb monsters." "Well, what does scare you?" Alex demanded. "Nothing," Adam bragged. "I don't get scared by movies either. Nothing ever scares me." Gee, I wonder if something will scare him by the end of the book. Our plot kicks off with Zackie and Alex walking home one evening when they pass what remains of a small antique store. A lightning storm rolled through town the other day. The store was struck and caught fire. Zackie is curious and convinces Alex to explore it with him. The two of them walk around the husk of a store before Zackie spots an antique typewriter, seemingly untouched by the fire. As he approaches it, however, he finds it bathed in blue flame, a kind of magical energy that only he can see, and when he touches it, he gets what seems to be a nasty electrical shock, knocking him unconscious for a second. After Zackie comes to, the two children are discovered by the store's owner, a normal-seeming woman who chastises them for how dangerous it is to be there. When Zackie asks her about the typewriter, she sighs and goes, "Well, I'm pretty much out of business now. You want it?" The romantic image of being a professional writer clicking away at an old typewriter is too strong for Zackie to pass up, and for once this isn't Stine projecting his adult interests onto children. Even I wanted a proper typewriter when I was 12. There's just something classic about them. One thing I'll give this book credit for, it takes the time to point out what a physical inconvenience a typewriter actually is. Zackie has to carry it back to his house, and it's basically a giant metal brick, so he's about to pass out from exhaustion when he gets home. His parents, while initially confounded, are nonetheless supportive enough to track down typewriter ribbon, which was already a niche product in 1997. Alex is also supportive. She's a good friend. Adam is not supportive. He's a bad friend. In fact, we get this scene of Adam and a couple of other school kids dropping one of the science class mice down the back of Zackie's shirt. Adam might actually be a terrible bully. Why do you hang out with him? Anyway, it's time to give this new typewriter a spin. I typed the first words of the story. It was a dark and stormy night. "Hey!" I uttered a cry as lightning flashed in my bedroom window. Rain poured against the glass. A sharp roar of thunder shook the house. Darkness swept over me as all the lights went out. First off, Zackie, you stole that line from Snoopy. What are you, Cinemassacre? But yeah, everything Zackie types up ends up coming true. When his story has the wind pick up, the wind outside picks up. When Zackie types that he and Alex were alone in the house, Zackie's dad seems to disappear for a while. So basically, Zackie has discovered a god machine. So you're probably figuring how this will go down, right? Zackie got bullied at school, now he has something that can alter reality itself. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Right? Nah, we ain't got time for that. Zackie doesn't even consider using the typewriter's powers for personal gain or getting back at anyone, which isn't exactly conducive to conflict, you know? So it's Adam, who's not convinced of the typewriter's powers, who gets the ball rolling. He had his back turned to us, but I could see that he was leaning over the typewriter. He was typing something onto the page. I grabbed the sheet of paper and pulled it from the roller. "Well, what did he type?" Alex asked impatiently. He, I sputtered. She grabbed the page from my hand and read Adam's sentence out loud. "The blob monster hid in Zackie's basement, waiting for fresh meat." You know what's weird? That's not a chapter-ending cliffhanger. With all the bullshit chapter enders Stine's had over the years, he really seems to miss the most appropriate ones. Well, this obviously isn't good. The kids hear some bumping around in Zackie's basement, but when they go to investigate, there's nothing there. The wind is coming through a window and knocking some stuff around. This convinces Zackie that everything up to this point has been a coincidence, and he no longer believes in the typewriter's powers. So, when Zackie gets teased by Adam and the other students again, Adam is not your friend, Zackie. Zackie goes back to the typewriter and starts writing a story about the pink blob monster attacking the town and eating everyone. But this isn't an act of revenge. It's not giving into the temptation of power. We're not going Death Note here. It's just a kid expressing frustration with what he truly believes is a harmless act, like punching a pillow. And then the blob monster actually shows up this time. It looks just as I described it in my story, I realized. Like a huge, slimy human heart, pink and wet, with tiny black eyes, and purple veins knotted on top of its head, and a mouth cut into its belly. Throbbing. Damn, Stine, kudos where it's due. This is like your grossest monster ever. Some people say this thing is a reference to the film The Blob, what with the name and all, but Monster Blood was more blob-like than this thing. Still very B-movie though. As it goes around town eating people, it reminds me of MST3K fodder like the Creeping Terror. 2 dark uniformed police officers leaped in front of me. They had their nightsticks raised. My legs were shaking so hard I nearly fell. I stumbled back and gaped in horror as the blob monster pulled open its mouth. The fat, purple tongue swung around both police officers. They beat it with their sticks. They shoved it. They tried to wrestle free. But the tongue tightened around them, and pulled them into the huge open mouth in the creature's belly. Pulled them both inside, and then the mouth slammed shut with a disgusting splat. Oh, hell yeah, the blob monster is based! Fight the power, vor all cops! The blob monster eats Adam. You scared now, punk? And Zackie and Alex get chased back to Zackie's house in hopes of using the typewriter to get rid of this monster. But the mechanism jams. The typewriter won't work. But then, Zackie realizes something. When Adam used the typewriter, it didn't come true. The power was never in the typewriter. The power was in Zackie the whole time. Perhaps the typewriter gifted him the power when he first touched it in the store, but whatever happened, Zackie is now an actual god. He wishes the blob monster away, everyone the blob monster ate are restored to life, the end. Well, I mean, not quite. We get one final chapter where it's revealed that this whole thing was actually a story written by a blob monster. He asks his blob monster friends what they thought. They liked it, but were sad that the humans won in the end. The author, Blob Monster, agrees and rewrites it so that the kids are all eaten. That's cute, I guess. So that's the blob that ate everyone. A gross in a fun way monster, a premise that excites the imagination, some half-decent descriptive prose. There's actually a lot to like here. I just wish it had, like, a plot, or themes, or a point, you know? It feels so empty. The premise here is so broad that Stine could have gone in 24 different directions, but instead he opted for the least interesting, least challenging one. Oops, made a monster, then immediately unmade the monster. Zackie has neither a character arc nor vindication, and you kind of have to have one or the other. As I mentioned before, Zackie is never tempted by what he assumes is the typewriter's power. He never uses it for personal gain, doesn't type up, and then I had $1 million, and he doesn't use it to get back at his bullies. When he does write a story about his bullies getting their comeuppance, it's when he doesn't believe in the typewriter's powers. There's so many easy stories there. Zackie dreams of becoming a famous author, using the magic typewriter to cheat his way into fame. The typewriter breaks, and now Zackie is expected to make deadlines with skills he never actually developed. Or, Zackie uses the typewriter to get back at his bullies, ends up becoming the ultimate bully, and loses Alex as a friend. Oh, the irony. You could do something like that, or you could vindicate Zackie's skills and passions. Maybe Adam teases Zackie about how writing is dumb and anyone can do it, and then when Adam types up the blob monster, the monster actually does appear and starts rampaging around. Adam can't come up with a way to stop it because he's actually not that creative. So Zackie steps up to the plate, writes a clever and suspenseful way to defeat the monster instead of just wishing it away, and shows Adam just how talented he is in writing. Not just anyone can do it. For a book about writing, it sure has nothing to say about writing. It can't be bothered to do the most token, reading is good and imagination is magic. I mean, Stine, I'll give you this. You don't have the self-indulgences of Stephen King, who has to write a substance-abusing middle-aged author from Maine into everything. But the one time you probably should have said something about your own craft was in the book about a guy who writes scary stories. Do you have, a philosophy about writing scary stories that you want to pass on to the kids? Now's the time to share it. There are times when the book hints at a larger backstory and then ignores those hints completely. The antique store being burned down but the typewriter being untouched implies something mysterious was afoot. The fact that the store was struck by lightning and the first thing Zackie does with the typewriter is start a lightning storm suggests a direct connection, but it's never followed through with. The typewriter isn't given the tiniest bit of backstory. It's just this thing some kids found. And in the end, it doesn't even matter because Zackie was the one with the powers the whole time. And we could have gotten so much wilder than a storm and a blob monster. The typewriter premise is basically a blank check to go wild, and Stine usually doesn't need an excuse to go wild. He lets plenty of unmotivated weirdness on the page, but give the protagonist the power to create anything he can imagine, and Stine freezes up. Basically, my rewrite is write a story. Any story. Have the characters go on a journey, have the plot communicate ideas, decide what your book is about. Maybe you think that's a cop-out from me, but when I'm doing my exercise and course correction, usually there's a course to be corrected. This book never sets sail. And I'm getting lost in my metaphors tonight. This is a short review, but this one just gave me nothing to work with. I give The Blob That Ate Everyone an empty bird's nest out of 10.